So, our next speaker neglected to give me his fun fact. So, instead, I'll tell you, he gave me, he's a frequent speaker, he's been here a bunch of times. He gave me one of my most prized possessions. It's a NASA patch. Like one of those patches you can sew on. I love that thing. He gave it to me. I'm like, oh my goodness. I don't think he realizes quite how much I love it. Well, now he does. So everyone please welcome David.
It's not, there it goes. All right, now we're on. Sorry, I'm gonna bring it down just a little bit. It sounded a little bit too loud for me. I really feel short now after the last speaker. I mean, I was short to begin with, but now I really feel bad. Thank you, everybody. How many here are actually from a government agency? So several, so you might relate to some of this. About 5, 7, 8 years ago, I was brought up to help develop a data science team here at headquarters at NASA. Spent a lot of time working with the team, trying to make sure we get the right people in, the architecture, battle with OCIO about how we do things and what they need, and the different types of things they're doing. Throughout that whole time frame, I got further and further away from what I really love to do is coding, the technical side of things. So then 2 years ago, OpenAI, ChatGPT, all of these came out and man, I am going to go full board into this. I jumped full force into it, did a face plant against the IT security wall and says, no, 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 you can't do this. You can't use our data to go out there and do that. So I said, I don't like taking no for an answer. So I said, what can I do? So I started working on and looking at how we can use local large language models in our pipeline in order to be doing some of these things. Can't teach you everything or show everything in 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do about 10 minutes or so is just trying to give you some basic concepts of how to use local large language models, and then show you a few things that are already out there, things that you can spin up today and start playing with on your own and try figuring out how you can utilize them in your workflow. So that being said, so as we talk about large language models here locally for personal knowledge management, in this case, using my own documents and my own data, why are we doing this? Well, it's much easier for us to start really playing around and learning how to use large language models in the enterprise if we know how to do it internally here. We do it locally because it's for privacy, accessibility, it's all running on your laptop. Yes, you have to have a fairly decent laptop, at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, hopefully more. Yes, that's kind of an oxymoron when you're working in the government and they don't give you those kind of laptops, but we'll make it work somehow. Some of these large language models are coming in smaller sizes to make it easier to at least get to know how to do these things. All right. If we start looking at large language models, one of the things you're going to hear about, if you haven't already, retrieval augmented generation or RAG, part of your pipeline. What is RAG? It's just a way to use your query that you're asking, embed it, you do some embedding side, put it into a vector database, use that as content or context for asking the question to the large language model, so it too can look at the information you've stored against it to be able to find you the most relevant data inside of that. That's in a nutshell how easy it is to do. This is kind of the pipeline. As you look through this, you ask a query, that query gets embedded into a model, gets vectorized and put into a vector store. You have all your documents at the top that come down, and they also are being indexed and stored in vector embeddings. You have to play around with the token size and different things in there, making sure how much the context windows around that document. That's the fun part of working with this thing, because you get to learn and work through some of these things. But these are things you need to think about if you haven't already started working with them and playing with them, how you're going to do that and how you're going to work with your documents and with the particular model you're looking at. And there's so many models to look at. And then on the other side over there, of course, that information gets pulled out of the vector store. You use that as context against the large language model information. Then that's fed to the model, which then gives you back your answer. Very simple as far as on the laptop. It can get more elaborate than this as you start going for an enterprise scale. But at least this is what you can do on your laptop, use it on your own documents and play with it there. So how do you start? Easiest thing I found out, and I went through many rabbit holes, and you will too. As you go through some of these things, you will start digging and digging and digging, and eventually you're going to go crazy as far as how many things are out there. So figure out what you like, what you can make work, and then start playing with it and then go from there. So Ollama, if you haven't heard about Ollama, it's Ollama.com, go there, download it. You can actually pull and run local large language models of all various types. You can go into the website and just look at the different models they have. I would probably start with Llama 3, Mistral, a couple of those things to start off with. They're updated regularly. You can get them in very small, 1 billion, size or 7 billion. You can go get the 70 billion sizes too if you want. They're not going to work on your laptop, but you can get them to play with them. I actually did that the first time I started playing with this, downloaded the Savior. Let me try this out. 4 hours later, it was still trying to process the question. And I said, okay, maybe I'll go back to the smaller models. So very easy to pull, very easy to update. You'll start looking at those models and figure out what they can do. Some of them are good for text. Some of them are good for video. Some of them are good for images. Some of them are good for tools, which is another concept I'll have to bring up in a minute. But you have to look at those models and play around and see what you can do with them. Text parsing is another thing in your pipeline or workflow that you need to figure out how you're going to do. That is where you're taking your documents and just put them into different chunks to figure out how you're going to put that into your vector database or vector store, however you're going to do that. And there's different ways of doing it. Llama Parse is a product by Llama Index that allows you to, it's actually built around generative AI and actually to parse your PDF files fairly easy, utilizing that framework to be able to bring that information in. Another thing you can do is docx to text in your pipeline. That's a Python library for you to be able to parse that document out, put it into your pipeline in order to vectorize it and put it into a store of some type. So that's things you'll have to think about as you're trying to work through your pipeline. And again, all of this can go to scale if you're trying to implement this in a more enterprise capability, but this is good to do on your laptop and even show for small teams to do things like this, to be able to share and show your management what you can do with these types of things. I'm getting the question all the time from management. I want to do what ChatGPT does. Great. But we've got all this data we need to first figure out how to handle. We got to get this foundation. So they don't really understand what it takes to do that. So I use this to show them, here's the capability, but in order to do this, we have to do X, Y, and Z to the data, to the pipeline, to make sure we have all the right tools set in place. Then, and this is how much it's going to cost. And then you go, well, let's talk about it later. But that's kind of where we're at with that. But it is getting a little easier for them to understand. It reminds me of when Google first came out. Some of you might be too young for that. But we started getting these questions, I just want to be like, search like Google in the enterprise. Well, you can't do that. And now hearing that, we just want ChatGPT in the enterprise. We can do that, but we've got to figure out how to handle the data and what we need to do with that. Talked a little bit about the vector database here. That is where you are storing your embeddings of your Word documents. Basically, it's just turning your words into numbers for it to be able to have some kind of similarity capability of finding the right words that you're asking for. So when you put in a query, and that query is then vectorized, it can find in your documents similar words for what you're looking for and use that as context to go back to the large language model to build a response from that. There are several different databases that are easy to use: Pinecone, Weaviate, and Chroma. I use Weaviate. Again, most of my stuff that I'm using today is because that was the first thing I saw and the first thing I got to work on my laptop. So as long as it's working, I'm going to continue to use it for the time being. Weaviate is good because you can use it as an embedded model or embedded database within your pipeline. You don't actually have to set it up, or you can do a Docker setup or something like that, or go ahead and load it on your laptop if you want to have it stored there. But it works very well, and they also have some very good tutorials, documents, and they have a product, open source product called Verba, V-E-R-B-A, which is basically a one-stop shop to set up your own RAG pipeline in a Docker container that lets you do everything I'm talking about without setting anything up yourself. So if you haven't seen it, try it out. Another thing you'll need to know about and think about is hybrid search. How are you going to implement the search of your documents through that context, from keyword based to semantic? All of these things are done within your ingestion pipeline. To utilize both, there's things called re-ranking, where you've taken that and then they re-rank it again to bring up the most important information you want to the top, and then utilize that in order to get the information and develop the results from the large language model. Again, I know this is a lot of information in 20 minutes, but these are just, I wanted to give you concepts to think about. Prompt templates is something that's going to be very, very important in any kind of RAG pipeline when you're looking at this. A prompt template is nothing more than instructions to the large language model of how you want it to do things. Whether it's return a query, do a SQL statement, how you look at data. You can also set up things such as agents, in the sense that you can tell it who you're acting like. We're working on personas, and I'm in the human capital domain within NASA. So we're working on personas for human resource business partners, or a hiring agent, or various other positions there. This is what they do. This is how they use the data. We put that into a prompt template so that when the question is asked by them, it utilizes information about their workload, their work day, and their requirements to try to get the best answer coming back from that. All right. Llama Index. There's several different frameworks out there for you to be able to create, and I'll show you some simple ways of doing that. Again, this is one of the things that I got it to work first. Between Llama Index and LangChain were the two that were most popular. I got Llama Index to work first, so I just kept going with it. I eventually got LangChain to work, but I found this one fairly intuitive. I enjoy the tutorials and all the different things they have and the videos they have. So it really made it easy to set things up and really develop your pipeline to get your answers back from your model. And then building the user interface. Streamlit is fairly easy to use within Python. They've got a lot of good chat components in there for you to utilize. And then Shiny, I'll show you a few things. Shiny has really come around. Anybody go to the Posit conference in Seattle recently? You may have seen Joe Chang show his Shiny app. I'll show it in a minute also to chat with data. So I'm going to show that as what it's supposed to do. And then I'll show you what I've tried to do where it's still not working yet, but we're getting closer. With local models, he's using GPT 4.0 or something like that. And here's a few resources. Shiny Chat is a new package from Posit on creating a chat interface. You can do it both in R and Python. Elmer is their R package for how you connect to the different providers, whether that's Anthropic, OpenAI, Ollama, some of the different things you need to do there. They're still in work, so their APIs may change, but it's working, and I'll show you how that looks like, and it's very easy to set some things up. Shiny for Python UI.chat is another tool set out there if you're working in Shiny, but you want to do Python. There's another way of doing that. And then that last one is how to build a chatbot with custom data sources, Streamlit and Llama Index. It's a very good tutorial just to walk you through to set something up. And again, I'll show you some of those examples. And in the end, you hopefully have something like this, where it's basically all the various concepts that you need to think about and do within your RAG pipeline twice you create your interface. All of this can work on your laptop as well as then you can take it and expand upon it for your organization, your enterprise, and go from there. You can show it to your CIO guys and see if they can help you set these things up. But they're probably still learning themselves. So definitely work on it. And I think you can really find some good information from what you have to do there and play around a lot so you can really figure out the best way to get the answers that you're looking back. That is a very, very high level introduction to large language models in your pipeline. Let me show you how you can set some of these things up really quick. So let's take a look. So and I know it was mentioned a little while ago, or in a couple of talks ago, this is Positron. You talked about Positron, the IDE from Posit now. It looks a lot like VS Code, which is basically, as you said, it was a port of VS Code. But if you can see up here at the top, it's running Python 3.12, but I'm also running R 4.4 at the same time. In the past, I used to have to use RStudio to do my R work, then I go over to VS Code to do any Python work. I'm going to run both R and Python codes in the same IDE at the same time, showing you how this works here. This is that big enough? Do I need to make it larger? We good? Okay. So this is Shiny Chat, which I talked about. This is just a simple code to open up a quick chat interface for you to ask a question to Ollama. The main thing here, the biggest thing here is this part right here from Elmer, Chat Ollama. Down there is pointed into the Ollama model, which in this case I'm using Mistral Instruct model, and I'm giving it a little system prompt of how to act and how to return answers, and it just takes that information, puts it back to the application. So let me run this Shiny app. It should come up over here. And it can take a little bit slow. I've already got a question up here. So why should I be attending this conference? Let's see what it says. It comes back here. So it is using my Mistral Instruct model on my laptop. Earlier was taken about, there we go. So young one, the government and public sector serves you well to strengthen the force within the data. It does sharpen your skills in the art of data analysis. Are you learning from fellow Jedi Knights, or shall we say learn professionals? Most certainly will be. So I told it to talk like Yoda. Talk like Grogu. My spirit animal is Grogu. I want to make sure that, what we do. So I like to have fun with this stuff and play around with this. My team gets tired of me doing some of these things, but they'll get over it. So that's a simple chat interface. As you can see, it was all less than 32 lines of code. You can copy this directly from the Shiny Chat GitHub repo and start playing with it yourself and adding things in. But we want to do something a little bit more. Oh, let me go back over here because I wanted to show this first. This is Joe Chang's application. I believe this is his Python one where he's taken the tips database. This is running a DuckDB file in the back end. It's just a database of tips over a certain amount of time, showing how much the total bill, the tips by female, by male, by dinner, by time, by smoker or non-smoker, and the percent. So this is basically your Shiny application showing all this. But we can ask the database here a couple of questions like, show me only male smokers who had dinner on Saturday. And as you can, again, using their GPT 4.0, and as you can see, it updated the dashboard in itself. These are pretty cool things if we can get these to work inside the organization to show these things. And it also gave you some information over here of what the SQL statement would look like to do that and how it ran it. I can also ask it, how do things compare for dinner? This one, I'm not going to change the dashboard because it wasn't asked to here, but it just gives you the information about it. So you can ask questions about your data. That's what it's supposed to do. That's available now. There's a GitHub repo for that. You can download it, play around with it, which is what I did. This is the R sidebot version of that. And again, I just ran a 1R file there. Well, let me close out of here. And, oops, there we go. Oh, we're sorry, wrong one. I am in the sidebot. So this was a little bit more. It's about 300 lines of code. The most important things here are pointing it to the right model that you want. Again, Mistral instruct. And then down here at the bottom, where I'm passing the chat in the system prompt that I've already created. In the system prompt, there is a prompt markdown file that tells it how to act and how to do the queries and things like that. Here's where I built they built the tools for that. This one's how to update the dashboard, and this one's how to run a query. Those tools tell the model what they need to do when you ask it a question. So let's run that on the Shiny app, all within Posit here, or Positron. Doesn't that sound like a transformer name? I've asked them to see if they can give me a transformer logo for that of some type. Maybe a bumblebee doing something. Anyway, so here's the same app. This is in R now, pointing to my local model. It's still got some issues. The tools are not working correctly in this case, but it will return an answer. In this case, going to be a little slower than the one online because must have got it tired because they would see. Again, it was about 20 seconds, but it wasn't too bad. There we go. So again, as you see, nothing changed on the dashboard, but it's telling me it filtered the dashboard to show only male smokers. Tells me how to do the tips and gives me this information. Again, I could run this query inside the code itself and probably get the answer, but it's hallucinating still a little bit in here. It's making up some of the data as we go through, but it's using the information to get that. It's using what I have here. I need to work on the tools themselves to figure out the right way of making it. It could be a combination of how they've implemented the tools within Elmer to do this, or it could be something else, but that's definitely something we can work on there. All right, so let's just want to, so that was a R Shiny app. This is a Shiny Python app, same thing here. Again, same IDE, I just run the Shiny app. And it'll be all in the same ED. So I don't have to jump from one IDE to another to do these things. I can run both my R and Python code in the same environment, not the same environment, the same IDE, and able to utilize and not have to jump back and forth and still. And this is configurable, so I can have scripts side by side, so I can compare and run things. So there's a lot of things you can do with that. I would get the same thing here. Let's do the last question. How do you? If I didn't copy it. This one sometimes works. Yeah, see, it came back with it. Again, it tells me how to do it, gives me some information trying to do that, but I had an error over here with some attribute on here that I need to try to figure out where that is. Something within the code within Elmer, I believe, but I still haven't figured it out. One of the other things I wanted to show here, GitHub Copilot, some of the other things you utilize when you're coding that you want to try to use, you can actually do that within VS Code as well as Positron now. There is a extension called Continue, and I'll show it over here, which you can download. It points it to Olama very easily. You can tell it which model to use. Over here, you can see it's using CodeLlama right now. It's the latest, but I have all of it detected all of the various models I have on my laptop, and I can easily ask it to, how do you create a histogram, let's say, in R. And it should come back and shows me how to do that. But I could also point it to the code, bring the code in, ask it to correct the code. All of it, again, within my IDE. It got code completion in there to utilize it. It did not enter. There we go. It's easy for you to start utilizing things and playing around with large language models. And here it's giving me the answer with the code that I could import into my script over here if I wanted to. The last thing I want to show here, and I know I'm out of time really quick. This is a Python application using Streamlit and Llama Index. It's going to show you how you can choose the model or the data source you want. It turns it into vector embeddings and stores it in a local store here on the hard drive, and then it prints it out. So here I have to actually, this one I don't have a, let me go here. Let's go here. Then this one actually runs up so it's actually started already to look at my documents that I have, some human capital documents. And again, I said Grogu is kind of my spirit animals. How many leave hours can I accrue? In a year. This is all against human capital data that I fed it into the vector database. And this was taken about, there we go. You can accrue up to 104 hours, 13 days of sick leave for general family care and bereavement. While kind of answers the question, not really the question that I wanted. I was looking for annual leave. It didn't do that, but it's in work, but it's again, a few hundred lines of code. I was able to get this up and running, test various different models, pointing to various different data sources to play around with. You can do a lot of different things and deploy this and test it out. It's a way for you to start working, practicing, looking at these things. I needed to get back into doing some coding, and this is kind of what I started to do to try to play around. Hopefully, in another 3 or 4 months, I'll be able to get this a little bit more evolved and really show how you can use it against your own data, point it to your data, and just have it index it all instead of start working with your data instead of a search of your data on your laptop. Use this to answer questions against your data. I know I'm out of time. I appreciate everybody listening, and thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach me.